Hey guys, Thomas the Solar Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Mid-90s. So, this movie follows our young person here, Stevie, who gets into fights with his brother, and there are yellings about, and all that good stuff of brotherly rivalry going on. So, after the older brother goes off, Stevie hangs in his brother's room and meanders about. And he's like all up into albums and songs, and we see that his mom gives him, tries to, is like, saying stuff that's trying to be funny or whatever. Anyways, Stevie gives his older brother like this little gift to his brother, very briefly, but afterwards, after hanging in the streets, he starts to see these skaters mess around with this store clerk. So he proceeds to enter inside where they are watching these other pro skaters on these little videos. So Stevie wants to trade some of his stuff for a board of his own. So it cuts to a montage of him practicing on the board, the skateboard, and falling over and over again. That is, until he gets it right, and then of course he celebrates. So he goes back to the store to see the various other skaters in there, and he's very excited just to, get one of them water or whatever. And he's, watching them. And one of the other kids, the slightly older one, I never caught his name, but he's this bald kid, offers him a smoke. So Stevie decides to go into that route and starts to smoke. And him and this other kid talk about, trying not to be, as they say, not gay. They say, doing this thing would make you gay or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, whatever, I won't do that thing. Okay, fine. So, after he returns home after hanging out a bit, his brother offers him to steal some money to get a better board than the one that he already possesses. So, he proceeds to go back to the store, and he sees that the rest of the crew are sort of mocking each other, saying, oh, all white people do this, and all black people do this, and or they ask it in a form of a question, and quite frankly, this little part where they are just riffing on each other is pretty much my favorite part of this entire movie. I mean, the ending, I'll get to that in a bit, but I will say, if there was any one thing I think I missed the most from the 90s, barely growing up in it myself, I was really young, obviously, when the 90s were along, but this was mid-90s, so I'd probably only be about 5 myself, or whatever. But nonetheless, that still doesn't take away from the attitude of the 90s, and I think that is something that is severely missed, considering that this era, the one that we live in currently, seems to be all about the, you have to control what you say, you have to save space, and all this bullshit that has just been completely bogging us down, completely making us move backwards in all these social aspects instead of moving us forward. That is the one thing I really do miss about the 90s growing up, is just being able to make fun of each other. It is so refreshing just to hear people mock each other and have no fear or no repercussions of he said this or he said that. None of that exists in this era, and it is so refreshing. That is the one thing I do wish that would be brought back. I can make a whole another video about that, but I'm, not enough time. Anywho, getting back to the movie, I should say. So yes, they do mock each other, and they ask Stevie all these questions as well, and they give him a new skateboard. So as they are like moving into this new location, they are he gets his board stuck, and it kind of cuts away. So I guess he kind of just gets it back somehow. Anyways, we start to learn about who these other individuals are. We have this guy with pretty crazy hair. His nickname is literally fuck shit, because that is a thing he says. We have, I think it was either Ray or Roy. I think it's Ray. No, it's Roy. Sorry. Is the kid, this black kid who wants to become this professional. And we have another kid called Fourth Grade, who is this tall kid who keeps on recording everything that is happening. And Stevie becomes Sunburn, and then there was the other kid whose name I actually did not get his real name or his nickname, so I'll just call him the bald kid, because I honestly don't remember his name. I feel kind of bad that I missed out on a name, but whatever. So this group is getting harassed by what they refer to as this fake cop. I guess this was like a park cop that happened to come across them. So they give him a hard time, and there's even more name calling afoot as they move their way into this skate park. So they start, two of them, Fuck Shit and Roy, start to interview this other skater guy. But as they are hanging about, the real cops arrive on the scene. And Stevie manages to get the slip away and returns home. And when he does, the mom asks for where the money was, or if he took part in stealing the money, and he says no. So Stevie, sorry, I said he had done the ollie earlier, but this is the point where he does the ollie and he kind of like freaks out and stuff. So after his success, he goes back to the others, and Fuckshit starts to complain about his parents and how they are. And then it cuts to them all on the roof. They are trying to proceed to jump this gap, in which Stevie tries and attempts this himself, but he did not make enough speed to even make the jump, so he proceeds to fall and crash and hurt his head. So the others rush over to help him out. So, eventually, he gets a little bit, taken care of there, and he goes back to his mom, who's like, oh, I don't want you hanging out later on, but he does get this new board for free in the process of doing all that. So, on the streets, we see that Fuckshit runs into Stevie's older brother, but the older brother and Stevie are not interacting in a way that would have them say, like, oh, you're friends with them. We actually cut to that later on, with the two of them, that being Stevie and the older brother, are playing this co-op game, and the older brother is like, oh, your friends are like losers or whatever. And he proceeds is like, oh, our mom was like this, and then Steve is like, forget our mom or whatever. So Stevie takes this pill that actually kind of does nothing, all things considered. And they start to head to this party that Fuckshit suggested. So he gets them all drinks, and they start to drink, and they hang out with these women. One of these women, I don't know the age, but nonetheless, probably older than Stevie. One of them is hanging out with Stevie, and he does get kissed by this girl, and they go into a room and get nearly naked with each other, and then proceed to continue to kiss. But when that moment ends, we see Stevie leave and talk to his friends about, he's like suggesting that they went further, saying that he fingered her, and she's also playing it up with her friends, so each side is playing up what really happened, which was just kissing. So Stevie, coming home from getting drunk and doing smokes and getting laid, apparently, according to him, he starts to mess with his older brother and gets beat down some more. And in this short moment, Stevie tries to commit suicide by hanging a controller around his neck, but fails to do so. Eventually, the mom does come in, tries to talk some sense into Stevie, and Stevie's just yelling at his mom. Some phenomenal acting on his part, just absolutely just going apeshit like crazy. So, we see that Roy has a sit down with Stevie, and Roy gets real about his situation and the situation of the other friends, in hopes to pick Stevie up from his little down moment when he's by himself. And again, I think that's a really particularly strong scene. However, again with that ending, a strong scene does not make a movie great, unfortunately. So with that being said, Stevie's picked up, and they start to make their way, just sort of hanging out with the crew again, slowly but surely. Fuck shit is there among them. The skaters are all hanging out. Roy's starting to hang out with the pros, and fuck shit's like, kinda not liking that. Or I should say Stevie or Sunburn, whatever you want to refer to him as, bumps into the bald kid that I mentioned earlier, and the two of them start to fight, and Stevie starts to overcome that little moment, because throughout the movie we saw that there was a greater and greater divide between those two as well. So after everyone's all tuckered out and that nonsense, fuckshit decides that he's going to drive everyone home, even under the clear influence that he is on. So they are all arguing in the car, and the car proceeds to get hit. We cut to Stevie after seeing him knocked out, getting like hospitalized and all that stuff. And the mom proceeds to get to the hospital, seeing all the friends asleep. So the mom sits with Roy specifically, and she's like, you can go see him. So, 4th grade, who had been recording the entire sequence, plugs his camera into the TV, and it shows him all the footage of everything that they had essentially created. And that was mid-90s, and I don't know if I would call this movie a particular masterpiece. I would say it does definitely have its strong moments. The kids hanging out, and definitely resembling the strongest part of the 90s, aced that scene. Totally aced the scene with Roy getting real with Stevie. Acing 2 scenes out of the entire movie, though. I do think the whole Stevie learning to ollie, doing the jump, which is what that is, if you are not a skateboarder person, if you don't know that lingo, I don't think that really goes anywhere. I guess the actual accomplishment being that he learned to jump, but then later on in the movie he forgets how to jump properly. I don't know why that would move backwards from him knowing how to do something to not knowing how to do something again. While, this moment where he's watching Roy do all these stunts. So, yeah, there's that. And yeah, I do think the movie kind of ends extremely flat. There are quite a few moments that I feel like don't really go anywhere. Roy talking with the pros, that doesn't go anywhere. Stevie learning that one trick and doing it once, it doesn't go anywhere. Stevie and the bald kid getting into a fight they don't really resolve it necessarily. They just sort of stop fighting, and that's the end of it, because it's the end of the movie now and things gotta stop. Again, there are definitely elements of this movie that didn't seem fully panned out, all things considered. So again, I don't think I would call it a masterpiece. I do think that 2 scenes in this movie would be set to be a masterpiece, but again, I don't think a few scenes do not make a full movie great. I think that there's a lot of things that this movie needed to do to be considered an actual masterpiece. There's definitely all these little side stories that don't go anywhere, and having the be one of the crux of this being called a masterpiece is definitely raised for question on my part. Again, 2 scenes don't make a masterpiece, but I still enjoyed the movie. I would say I would give it either a 6 or a 7, closer to a 7 out of 10. Again, I do think filling those little side character moments would have definitely helped it be a more solid 7, even an 8 out of 10. But as it is, again, probably a 6 out of 10, or 6.5 out of 10, or whatever technical number I want to use. But anyways, that is my review of Mid-90s. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out that link in the description. I had you to my Patreon page, and any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.